Well, it's after the big windstorm, and it is time to do a little cleaning up and fixing up from all the damage. And as you can see, that windstorm definitely took its toll on our poor little orchard. All those trees. It also did other damage around the area. Before this was a nicely stacked polyiso insulation panels, nicely stacked bundles of panels that the wind just blew over, and then the tumbleweed proceeded to then blow in too, and it ends out looking like a war zone. Some of our bigger trees also got blown over. That's our nice big red oak tree that I'm looking forward to getting huge. And there's a linden tree. That one got, I'm pretty sure both those got tagged by polycarbonate panels and knocked them over. We also had, those were all stacked in one spot, fence panels that we're using to take apart and build our fence around the garden area and all, and they got blown over and tagged one of our cherry trees. And then of course we have multiple slices, dices, and holes in our hoop house. The big surprise of the whole windstorm is that our so-called temporary cattle panel hoop house withstood the storm like crazy. I mean, it's amazing. I thought for sure this thing would just get torn up. Multiple times I just expected to see it just blown over, pieces blown away, busted, whatever. But this thing is amazingly resilient. I can't believe it. You go inside, looks like nothing happened. Okay, yeah, all the stuff laying around looks like a disaster, but it's like it hasn't even been touched. It's our own disaster in there. But when you're inside there and the wind's blowing, if you've seen in our previous videos, it's pretty amazing that the cattle panel just bends in. You think it's gonna collapse, but it doesn't. So anyway, decided to get busy and start these repairs. I quickly realized, I need to have some stakes to stake these trees up with, and I didn't have any stakes. So I decided, well, I better go ahead and set up a station and make some stakes. So I didn't have any stakes. I decided to just take some 2x4s, some extra 2x4s that we had, and I would just rip them in half so I had 2x2 stakes. They'd be good and sturdy and would really do the job. So I just got the rail set up so I could just run it down the rail and rip those things in two. As I was doing that just then, I realized, you know what? I don't have my push stick on that, so I better just stop, flip that over, and rip it from the other side. So fingers are still intact. I'm good. I kept my distance from the saw blades. So once I got those ripped in half, then I took the circular saw and just cut the ends to create a nice little point on the end. I wasn't particular about how I did it. Just ripped one side, ripped the other, just to create a nice point, and that would easily be pounded into the ground that way. Worked really well. So this tree here just got blown over, and so it was all still intact. That was good. I just needed to set it up, dig that hole out again, reset it, and pack it in. Grabbed my tumbleweed laden ladder there and More tumbleweeds rolled into the picture. And I pounded the stakes in and tied up the tree. So I just used some scrap rope that I had around. Tied them up. This poor tree is busted right down at the base. And I thought maybe it was completely busted off, but then as I started checking it out, I realized that some of the roots were still connected on one side of it. I don't have a lot of hope that is going to, the tree is going to make it. But I thought, well, I'll still give it a shot, give it a try. I'll stand it up. Can't really graft that back in down there or anything, but some of the roots are still connected. I figure I'll stand it back up, tie it up, give it some good support, and that way, hopefully give it a shot anyway. So. The hardest part about this whole thing was putting those stakes in the ground. They're fairly tall. And having to grab that sledgehammer and lift it up there and start pounding the stakes in. And I was still getting over being sick, and definitely wasn't feeling the greatest at that point, so my energy level was pretty low. I'd pound for a little bit and have to take a break, and pound for a little bit and take a break. But some of the trees were just bent over a little bit and just had to kind of straighten them up a little bit. Get them reset. Now this tree, if you remember from a previous video, it had busted in half. And when I saw this again, I thought, oh, it just busted in half again. But then at the same spot, I thought, oh, it just came undone. But when we got there, realized, no, it busted at a new spot. So I don't know what was going on there, but it broke down below. So figure, well, we'll still give it a shot, see if we can't get this thing to get through and live. So the top portion was still in good shape. And that bottom there, I figured, well, what I'll do is I'll just take that top portion and I'll just cut that into a point, and kind of a wedge point, and then I'll snip off the bottom and cut a V in the bottom, and I can just stick it in there and wrap it up and see if it'll make it. So I went ahead and cut off the top of that bottom portion. When I cut that off, I realized, oh, it's still green in there, so that's good. It's not like the tree was completely dead or anything. Now also noticed the same on the top. When I took the knife and cut that wedge on the top, it was still green as well. So I think there is a chance, anyway, that this might work if I did it correctly. I'll have to say I don't exactly know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of winging it and going for it. So I wedged that top, cut a wedge in the bottom, put it together, but obviously I don't know what I'm doing, because then I just ended up splitting that top section and had to cut it again and make a new spot for the top to go in. I was more careful that time, and things seemed to work well. So seemed to be holding together well, and I wrapped it up good with the plastic. And seemed to be holding together there. So then I just tied it off with the ropes, tied it in a couple places to give it some real good support. so that connection didn't come apart again. The big red oak tree, it was still in good shape. I mean, nothing was wrong with it. It just got knocked over and ripped that root ball out. So I knew I'd have to dig that out. At the time, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I'm exhausted right now. I don't want to have to dig this thing out. And then I was thinking about picking it up too. Those things are pretty heavy. So, but I'm like, I'll just keep going. Just do what I can. In all, this wasn't a terrible thing because, like I said, it wasn't damaged. And in the meantime, since it had been blown over, we actually had a meeting. We talked about some trees, people around the ranch and all, and what they were doing. And somebody mentioned breaking up the root balls. And I thought, oh man, that's right. And I hadn't been doing that with my trees. And so I thought, well, this will be a good time for me. Then I can take that root ball and break it up and give those roots a better chance of getting out. So I pulled that out and stomped on it and whacked it with the shovel and stuff, and that thing was solid. Those roots are pretty well bound up in there. And I ended up taking my sledgehammer and bashing it up a bunch and just trying to break it up. I broke it up a bit, but seriously, it was still pretty tight. So I don't know, we'll see what happens. It is not so windy today, so I'm hoping you can hear me on this microphone well today. Yesterday was a little too windy to use the mic. So yesterday also I got this tree planted back in the ground. You saw me trying to bust up that root ball. Man, that was something else. That was crazy. The thing was like a rock. Hopefully I didn't damage it by trying to bust it up, but I hear you can be pretty aggressive with those. So I'm just hoping that helps it out, because that thing was bound tight. But what I want to do next is throw a couple of stakes in here and tie up the tree. So if we do get something big coming up in the future here, it'll hold together. And I want to, yeah, we'll just go to there. I'm not thinking straight. I haven't been feeling well for the last few days. But we'll try to get this going. Oh man, oh my gosh. You know, it's funny how when you've been sick, you start to feel a little better. You think, oh, I'm good. And then you go to do something, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not so good. My endurance is like nothing right now. Yeah, let's get this thing out of the way first here. So that's nice and loose. Give it a little bit of wiggle room. Now I still have one other of the bigger trees over at the entrance to our driveway over there. Got hit by one of those polycarbonate panels, and it wasn't completely over, but it's laying over a bit. So we got to go fix that one up next. This is a linden tree, and it didn't go all the way over, but definitely pulling that root ball out again. Hope that root ball is not as tough as that last one was. There you go. Got the last tree upright. Still needs to be staked. I ran out of stakes, so I've got to go cut some more. But that's the last of the trees. So next repair from that wind damage is to fix the greenhouse. Now I've got a number of rips on this south side of the hoop house. Some are very large, some are just small holes. It's my understanding the best thing to do is to tape from both inside and outside. I'm assuming that's to help prevent water from getting in there again and working that repair and loosening it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the outside here and start with the small stuff. Try to just, slap a piece of tape on that. There's a couple of bigger tears that maybe I can get started with here that looks like they approximate really well. So should be able to get those started as well. So we'll give it a shot, see how it all turns out. Things like this here, it's right along the hoop. It's just kind of shredded there. I'll just place a piece of tape over that. I'm going to wipe it down first with a wet cloth. Try to clean the edge up so it'll stick better. But let's get that just covered up. I don't know if I'll even be able to put a piece from the inside because it's right up against that hoop. I'm just letting that dry right now while I open up this package. What we're going to use is clear Gorilla Tape. It's supposed to stick really well. We've already done one repair earlier because of us sticking the corner of a window into the into the hoop house, but it works. It's supposed to work really well. LDS Prepper, he's somebody that I follow on YouTube and has geothermal greenhouses, and that's what he uses. So, and I know he does his research, checks things out, so I'm sure it's good for what it's supposed to do. One down, about 15 more to go. Here again, I have kind of a clean tear right here. I think it'll be easy just to put a piece of tape over that. So the first thing I did is I cleaned around all the edges with a wet cloth so that the tape would stick well. And then I went through and just kind of took little pieces and covered up the little holes and the ones that, just took a little piece of tape to cover up. And then I went back to hitting the bigger ones. And so what I did with the bigger ones, those bigger slices, is I took a little piece of tape, I hooked it on one side of the slit, and then while holding the other side, pulled them together to approximate them really well and stick them together. So I'd take a few pieces to do that and get those sides together best I could. And then I just took longer pieces to cover right down the holes. And I think on these bigger ones here, what I ended up doing is I also then put a second piece on each side of that center piece. And that seemed to cover really well. I was really happy with the repairs. I mean, obviously it's a repair and you can see it and all, but I thought that it still looked pretty good. At least from a distance, you didn't really notice it that much. So all seemed to turn out pretty well. All in all, I thought it went really well. So, well, we pretty much got the greenhouse fixed up, and that was most of the damage and all that was done on the property. So we're glad that is done.